Sorry about that. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. On this 19th day of December 2023 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we're reading from the 4th chapter, 4th verse, page 185. Arjuna Vacha Aparam Bhavato Janma Padam Janma Vivasvitaha Katametad Vijaniyam Tvamado Proktavaniti. Arjuna Vacha Aparam Bhavato Janma Padam Janma Vivasvitaha Katametad Vijaniyam Tvamado Proktavaniti. Arjuna Vacha Apadam Bhavato Janma Padam Janma Vivasvitaha Katametad Vijaniyam Tvamado Proktavaniti. Arjuna Vacha, Arjun said, Aparam, junior, Bhavataha, your, Janma, birth, Param, superior, Janma, birth, Vivasvataha, of the sun god, Katam, how, Etat, this, Vijaniyam, shall I understand, from you, Ado, in the beginning, Proktavan, instructed, iti, thus. Translation. Arjun said, the sun god Vivasvan is senior by birth to you. How am I to understand that in the beginning you instructed this science to him? Purport. Arjuna is an accepted devotee of the Lord, so how could he not believe Krishna's words? The fact is that Arjuna is not inquiring for himself, but for those who do not believe in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or for the demons who do not like the idea that Krishna should be accepted as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For them only, Arjuna inquires on this point, as if he were himself not aware of the personality of Godhead, or Krishna. As it will be evident from the 10th chapter, Arjuna knew perfectly well that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the fountainhead of everything, and the last word in transcendence. Of course, Krishna also appeared as the son of Devaki on this earth. How Krishna remained the same Supreme Personality of Godhead, the eternal original person, is very difficult for an ordinary man to understand. Therefore, to clarify this point, Arjuna put this question before Krishna so that he himself could speak authoritatively. That Krishna is the supreme authority is accepted by the whole world, not only at the present, but from time immemorial. And the demons alone reject him. Anyway, since Krishna is the authority accepted by all, Arjuna put this question before him in order that Krishna would describe himself without being depicted by the demons, who always try to distort him in a way understandable to the demons and their followers. It is necessary that everyone, for his own interest, know the science of Krishna. Therefore, when Krishna himself speaks about himself, it is auspicious for all the worlds. To the demons, such explanations by Krishna himself may appear to be strange, because the demons always study Krishna from their own standpoint. But those who are devotees heartily welcome the statements of Krishna when they are spoken by Krishna himself. The devotees will always worship such authoritative statements of Krishna, because they are always eager to know more and more about him. The atheists, who consider Krishna as an ordinary man, may in this way come to know that Krishna is superhuman, that he is Satchit Ananda Vigraha, the eternal form of bliss and knowledge, that he is transcendental, and that he is above the domination of the modes of material nature and above the influence of time and space. A devotee of Krishna, like Arjuna, is undoubtedly above any misunderstanding of the transcendental position of Krishna. Arjuna's putting this question before the Lord is simply an attempt by the devotee to defy the atheistic attitude of persons who consider Krishna to be an ordinary human being subject to the modes of material nature. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnanandjana Salakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So Krishna has been speaking about how he spoke this Srimad Bhagavad Gita millions of years earlier to the sun god, who then spoke it to his son, the Vaivasvata Manu, who then spoke it to Ikshvaku, and in this way it came down in the human society. So externally or superficially, this seems puzzling to Arjuna, because this was millions of years ago. Arjuna sees Krishna as a contemporary. They're about the same age. So how could Krishna have spoken these same words millions of years ago to the sun god? And Krishna will explain how. And Prabhupada explains in this purport that the great mistake that the vast number of people make is that at best Krishna is a historical figure, and he probably is just a literary figment of someone's imagination. He's not a real person. But those who are devotees, who are practicing Krishna consciousness, that's the axiomatic basis for their practice, that Krishna is real, that he's a person, although he's a special person, Satchidananda Vigraha, as Lord Brahma says at the beginning of his 5th chapter of his Brahma Samhita. Ishvarak Paramak Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadiradi Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. The Supreme Controller, if you want, you can grab a book over here. The Supreme Controller is Krishna, Ishvara Parama. We're all little controllers. We have our own little sphere of control. Even the animals and the insects have that. We're on page 185. But our ability to control is very limited, and so we're anything but the Parameshwara. Krishna is the Parameshwara. Ishvarak Paramak Krishna, Satchidananda Vigraha. He has this eternal form of bliss and knowledge. He has no beginning. He's the beginning of all. His name is Govinda, and Sarva Karana Karanam, the cause of all causes. So Arjuna knows that, but for us, as Prabhupada explains, he's asking these questions so that all the doubts will be cleared up. How could Krishna speak the same words or same science millions and millions of years ago? And Krishna will explain further, answer Arjuna's question in the 5th text. Okay, we'll be reading text 5 on page 186, and I'll say, you say. Shri Bhagavana Vacha Bahuni me vatitani Janmani tavacharjana Tanyaham Veda Sarvani Natvam Veta Parantapa. The personality of God had said, many, many births both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot, O subduer of the enemy. Purport. In the Brahma Samhita 533, we have information of many, many incarnations of the Lord. It is stated there, Advaitamatchitamanadamananta rupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanancha Vedeshu Durlabhamadurlabhamatma Bhakto Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, Krishna, who is the original person, absolute, infallible, without beginning. Although expanded into unlimited forms, he is still the same original, the oldest, and the person always appearing as a fresh youth. Such eternal, blissful, all-knowing forms of the Lord are usually not understood by even the best Vedic scholars, but they are always manifest to pure, unalloyed devotees. Now, one note about Prabhupada's use of the word infallible, he gives it a special meaning. It means he never falls down under the control of the material energy. And he even would pronounce it there, infallible. That's the achyuta there. It is also stated in the Brahma Samhita 539, Radha Brahmadimurti Shakalani Yamena Tishtan Nanavatada Makarod Bhuvaneshu Kintu Krishnak Swayam Samabhavat Padamak Pomanyo Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, or Krishna, who is always situated in various incarnations, such as Rama, Nrsimha, and many sub-incarnations as well, but who is the original personality of Godhead known as Krishna, and who incarnates personally also. In the Vedas also it is said that the Lord, although one without a second, manifests himself in innumerable forms. He is like the Vaidurya stone, which changes color yet still remains one. All those multiforms are understood by the pure unalloyed devotees, but not by a simple study of the Vedas. Vedeshu durlabham adurlabham atma bhakto. Devotees like Arjuna are constant companions of the Lord, and whenever the Lord incarnates, the associate devotees also incarnate in order to serve the Lord in different capacities. Arjuna is one of these devotees, and in this verse it is understood that some millions of years ago, when Lord Kṛṣṇa spoke the Bhagavad Gita to the sun god Vivasvan, Arjuna, in a different capacity, was also present. But the difference between the Lord and Arjuna is that the Lord remembered the incident, whereas Arjuna could not remember. That is the difference between the part and parcel living entity and the Supreme Lord. Although Arjuna is addressed herein as the mighty hero who could subdue the enemies, he is unable to recall what had happened in his various past births. Therefore, a living entity, however great he may be in the material estimation, can never equal the Supreme Lord. Anyone who is a constant companion of the Lord is certainly a liberated person, but he cannot be equal to the Lord. The Lord is described in the Brahma Samhita as infallible, achyuta, which means that he never forgets himself, even though he is in material contact. Therefore, the Lord and the living entity can never be equal in all respects, even if the living entity is as liberated as Arjuna. Although Arjuna is a devotee of the Lord, he sometimes forgets the nature of the Lord. But by the divine grace, a devotee can at once understand the infallible condition of the Lord, whereas a non-devotee or a demon cannot understand this transcendental nature. Consequently, these descriptions in the Gita cannot be understood by demonic brains. Krishna remembered acts which were performed by him millions of years before. But Arjuna could not, despite the fact that both Krishna and Arjuna are eternal in nature. We may also note herein that a living entity forgets everything due to his change of body, but the Lord remembers because he does not change his Satchidananda body. He is Advaita, which means that there is no distinction between his body and himself. Everything in relation to him is spirit, whereas the conditioned soul is different from his material body. And because the Lord's body and self are identical, his position is always different from that of the ordinary living entity, even when he descends to the material platform. The demons cannot adjust themselves to this transcendental nature of the Lord, which the Lord himself explains in the following verse. So this is a very important understanding, is that Krishna is always situated in his purely spiritual body, purely spiritual form. And it may take different form, just like he has these expansions. There's Balaram, who looks pretty much like Krishna, but he has a different complexion. He's a little older. Then there's the Narayan forms, who have the 4 hands, carrying the club, lotus disc, and chakra. Club, lotus disc, and the club. Club, thank you. Yes, and then he has these Leela avatars, like the fish incarnation, the boar incarnation, or the Shringadev. They're all divine, they're all Krishna, and they have his qualities and their powers as he does, but they don't manifest them in full. He has all the powers, all the 64 qualities, and he manifests them in full. And so that's why he is said to be the original. All the others emanate from him. So we're also spiritual. We have spiritual bodies ultimately, but we're very minute. And because we're infinitesimal particles like sun rays or drops of water in the ocean, we have a tendency to be covered by the material energy. And so the whole purpose of Krishna consciousness is to regain our eternal spiritual nature and to be reinstated in our original position in the spiritual world. Okay, so now Krishna continues to describe his unique position here. Ajopi san avyayatma, bhutanam ishvaropi san, prakatim svamadishtaya, sambhavam yatma mayaya. Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, by my internal energy I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. Purport. The Lord has spoken about the peculiarity of his birth. Although he may appear like an ordinary person, he remembers everything of his many, many past births, whereas a common man cannot remember what he has done even a few hours before. If someone is asked what he did exactly at the same time one day earlier, it would be very difficult for a common man to answer immediately. He would surely have to dredge his memory to recall what he was doing exactly at the same time one day before. And yet men often dare claim to be God or Krishna. One should not be misled by such meaningless claims. Then again, the Lord explains his prakriti, or his form. Prakriti means nature as well as swarup, or one's own form. The Lord says that he appears in his own body. He does not change his body, as the common living entity changes from one body to another. The conditioned soul may have one kind of body in the present birth, but he has a different body in the next birth. In the material world, the living entity has no fixed body, but transmigrates from one body to another. The Lord, however, does not do so. Whenever he appears, he does so in the same original body, by his internal potency. In other words, Krishna appears in this material world in his original eternal form, with 2 hands holding a flute. He appears exactly in his eternal body, uncontaminated by this material world. Although he appears in the same transcendental body and is Lord of the universe, it still appears that he takes his birth like an ordinary living entity. And although his body does not deteriorate like a material body, it still appears that Lord Kṛṣṇa grows from childhood to boyhood, from boyhood to youth. But astonishingly enough, he never ages beyond youth. At the time of the Battle of Kurukshetra, he had many grandchildren at home. Or in other words, he had sufficiently aged by material calculations. So this is Prabhupada's special use of the word sufficiently, which means that he was quite aged by material calculations. Sufficiently doesn't mean enough in this context. In other words, he had aged quite a bit by material calculations. Still, he looked just like a young man, 20 or 25 years old. We never see a picture of Krishna in old age because he never grows old like us, although he is the oldest person in the whole creation, past, present, and future. Neither his body nor his intelligence ever deteriorates or changes. Therefore, it is clear that in spite of his being in the material world, he is the same unborn, eternal form of bliss and knowledge, changeless in his transcendental body and intelligence. Factually, his appearance and disappearance are like the sun's rising, moving before us, and then disappearing from our eyesight. When the sun is out of sight, we think that the sun has set. And when the sun is before our eyes, we think that the sun is on the horizon. Actually, the sun is always in its fixed position. But owing to our defective, insufficient senses, we calculate the appearance and disappearance of the sun in the sky. And because Lord Kṛṣṇa's appearance and disappearance are completely different from that of any ordinary common living entity, it is evident that he is eternal, blissful knowledge by his internal potency. And he is never contaminated by material nature. The Vedas also confirm that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is unborn, yet he still appears to take his birth in multi-manifestations. The Vedic supplementary literatures also confirm that even though the Lord appears to be taking his birth, he is still without change of body. In the Bhagavatam, he appears before his mother as Narayan, with 4 hands and the decorations of the 6 kinds of full opulences. His appearance in his original eternal form is his causeless mercy, bestowed upon the living entities so that they can concentrate on the Supreme Lord as he is, and not on mental concoctions or imaginations, which the impersonalist wrongly thinks the Lord's forms to be. The word Maya, or Atma Maya, refers to the Lord's causeless mercy, according to the Vishvakosha dictionary. The Lord is conscious of all of his previous appearances and disappearances, but a common living entity forgets everything about his past body as soon as he gets another body. He, the Lord, Krishna, is the Lord of all living entities because he performs wonderful and superhuman activities while he is on this earth. Therefore, the Lord is always the same absolute truth and is without differentiation between his form and self or between his quality and body. A question may now be raised as to why the Lord appears and disappears in this world. This is explained in the next verse. So this next verse is quite famous. Do you know this one by heart? Yada yada hi dharmasya?
Yada yada hi dharmasya jnanir bhavati bharata, and
then Adbhutanam adharmasya tadatmanam sujamyaha. But let me ask you, did you learn it as a child?
No, actually not as Bhagavad Gita, but this is a very famous verse as part of the story of Mahabharata.
Right.
It's sort of a TV series.
Oh, I see.
Which is very commonly watched by almost everyone.
Oh, I see. In India.
It's an Indian program.
Right, I see.
It's a soap opera, but it's actually Mahabharata.
I see.
Production.
And so in that way, many children.
The song ends in this.
I see. So it's an important verse. I'll say, you say. Yada yada hi dharmasya
Yada yada hi dharmasya
glanir bhavati bharata
glanir bhavati bharata
abhyutanam dharmasya
abhyutanam dharmasya
tadatmanam srijamyaham.
tadatmanam srijami.
Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharat, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. Purport. The word sujami is significant herein. Sujami cannot be used in the sense of creation because, according to the previous verse, there is no creation of the Lord's form or body, since all of the forms are eternally existent. Therefore, sujami means that the Lord manifests himself as he is. Although the Lord appears on schedule, namely at the end of the Dwapara Yuga of the 28th millennium of the 7th Manu, in one day of Brahma, he has no obligation to adhere to such rules and regulations because he is completely free to act in any way at his will. He therefore appears by his own will whenever there is a predominance of irreligiosity and a disappearance of true religion. Principles of religion are laid down in the Vedas, and any discrepancy in the matter of properly executing the rules of the Vedas makes one irreligious. In the Bhagavatam, it is stated that such principles are the laws of the Lord. Only the Lord can manufacture a system of religion. The Vedas are also accepted as originally spoken by the Lord himself to Brahma from within his heart. Therefore, the principles of Dharma or religion are the direct orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Dharmam tu sakshad bhagavat pranitam. These principles are clearly indicated throughout the Bhagavad Gita. The purpose of the Vedas is to establish such principles under the order of the Supreme Lord. And the Lord directly orders at the end of the Gita that the highest principle of religion is to surrender unto him only, and nothing more. The Vedic principles push one towards complete surrender unto him. And whenever such principles are disturbed by the demoniac, the Lord appears. From the Bhagavatam we understand that Lord Buddha is the incarnation of Krishna who appeared when materialism was rampant and materialists were using the pretext of the authority of the Vedas. Although there are certain restrictive rules and regulations regarding animal sacrifice for particular purposes in the Vedas, people of demonic tendency still took to animal sacrifice without reference to the Vedic principles. Lord Buddha appeared in order to stop this nonsense and to establish the Vedic principles of nonviolence. Therefore, each and every avatar or incarnation of the Lord has a particular mission, and they are all described in the revealed scriptures. No one should be accepted as an avatar unless he is referred to by scriptures. It is not a fact that the Lord appears only on Indian soil. He can manifest himself anywhere and everywhere, and whenever he desires to appear. In each and every incarnation, he speaks as much about religion as can be understood by the particular people under their particular circumstances. But the mission is the same, to lead people to God consciousness and obedience to the principles of religion. Sometimes he descends personally, and sometimes he sends his bona fide representative in the form of his son or servant or himself in some disguised form. The principles of the Bhagavad Gita were spoken to Arjuna and, for that matter, to other highly elevated persons because they were highly advanced compared to ordinary persons in other parts of the world. 2 + 2 = 4 is a mathematical principle that is true both in the beginner's arithmetic class and in the advanced class as well. Still, there are higher and lower mathematics. In all incarnations of the Lord, therefore, the same principles are taught, but they appear to be higher and lower in varied circumstances. The higher principles of religion begin with the acceptance of the 4 orders and 4 statuses of social life. 4 spiritual orders and 4 statuses of social life, as well as will be explained later. The whole purpose of the mission of incarnations is to arouse Krishna consciousness everywhere. Such consciousness is manifest and non-manifest only under different circumstances. So, the mission of the Lord is to re-establish genuine Dharma in human society. Hitopadesh. You ever hear the Hitopadesh? Instructions for the benefit of humanity. And in the Hitopadesh we hear this verse. How's it go? Ahara nidra bhayamaitanancha samanyare etat pushapiya naranam. Dharmo hitesham odiko vishesho dharme nihina pushapi samana. Both human beings and lower animals share these 4 principles: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. But what's unique in human society is dharma. So if there's no dharma or a false dharma, so-called dharma in human society, then it's no better than an animal society. So this is very important, and as I explained, I think last night or maybe on Sunday night, that one of the key verses in the early part of the Bhagavad Gita is Arjuna's verse where he surrenders to Krishna. Rather than give this whole argument why he won't fight, because I'll kill all these men and the women will become unprotected, then they'll be Varna Sankara and I'll be causing human society to be degraded, so I don't want any part of it. So he gave that up and he said, Karpan nidosho pahata sobhava prichhamitvam dharma samudacheta. That due to this miserly weakness, I've lost my will to fight. But now I realize I'm completely bewildered about what dharma really is. What is the right thing to do in this circumstance? That's his concern. Dharma samudacheta. So what's the solution? Yakshrey yakshanishitam bruhitanmai. Please tell me for certain how I can achieve the ultimate good. Shishyasteham. I'm your disciple now. I'm not going to be your friend in that role. Shishyasteham shadimam tvampapannam. I surrender unto you. Please instruct me. The whole relationship changes, and then at that point, Krishna begins speaking. Soon after he begins speaking the Bhagavad Gita, his actual instructions. So this is very important. It's the yadahi dharma is but that Krishna comes when society becomes a dharmic. There are all kinds of cheating dharmas that are going on, false dharmas, but the real dharma, which is set by Krishna, which is devotional service. Well, let's say this: dharma is that activity in human society that evokes true devotional service, bhakti. Savai pangsang paro dharmo yato bhaktir adhokshaje. That the supreme dharma in human society is that which inspires devotional service. And what is that devotional service? Ahoituki apratayata yeyatma suprasidati. Such devotional service has to be free of all material motivation. What's the motivation then? Simply to please God. And it has to be uninterrupted, which is the hard part. And that will completely satisfy the self. That was the question of the sages. What is that dharma by which the jiva can be completely satisfied? And this is the answer. So the whole Bhagavatam is also in more detail dedicated to establishing this dharma, inspiring people to take it up. But here Krishna is saying, that's my reason for coming also, to reestablish dharma. And why? Because he's connected to each one of us. We are his children. He feels responsible for us. He doesn't want us to suffer in ignorance in the material world. And so he comes, or he sends one of his expansions, incarnations, or his pure devotees. There's always a chance in the material world for people to take this up. But oftentimes it becomes so covered. Like in the West, what do we really know of this? Yes, we have religion, which has some characteristics of bhakti, but there generally doesn't qualify as to be able to bring one to pure devotional service. So that's what this is all about.
Is Christ considered one of the forms?
No, he's not considered one of the avatars. But but probably he was considered what might be called a Shaktiavesh. The Shaktiavesh avatar means that he's still a living entity like us. He's not Vishnu. But like Srila Prabhupada said, we accept him as a spiritual master, that he taught God consciousness in a way that people could accept in that time and that place where he was. So Krishna can empower a living entity to act in a special way to be able to spread his message. In fact, Lord Chaitanya says, I always forget the first line, Kali Kali Dharma Krishna Nama Sankirtan, Krishna Shakti Vinana Haite Pravartan, that the Dharma of the age is Harinam Sankirtan. That is the yajna of the age, that is the most efficacious way of regaining our Krishna consciousness. But unless one is empowered by the Lord, Krishna Shakti, Vina, without that empowerment, one cannot spread this all over the world. And so because Prabhupada did spread it all over the world, it's understood that he was inspired. He's a Shaktivesh, And we can get that to some degree also. If we become sincere, then we're also empowered to do things that otherwise we would not imagine that we could do. Just like this book distribution. I wouldn't say all the book distributors are Shakti Besh Avatar, but the same principle is there. With sincerity and effort and prayer, they become able to do things that otherwise they were thinking there was inconceivable that they could do. So in that sense, it's there. So Krishna, he appears, and this other in the Bhagavatam, it also says Dharman tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. That Dharma consists is always enunciated by the Lord Himself, and then there, that is the gold standard of Dharma, and so that's why this is Krishna's very words. So when he says Sarva Dharma Parityajya, I was thinking at the end there he says give up all these dharmas, because he spoke of karma yoga, he's going to say jnana yoga, right, and even dhyana yoga, meditative yoga. So he's basically saying, don't worry about all those. There's just one principle you will worry about: just surrender unto me, and all of your dharma will be satisfied. So that he says that's why he says Sarva Dharma Parityajya. But Prabhupada mentions in here that things start, really in society at large, Krishna consciousness becomes feasible when there's a Varnashram Dharma. There is this organization of the social society with the 4 social orders of the Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, and the spiritual orders of Brahmachari, Grahastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas. That's very important. And what's the whole purpose of it? That's mentioned in the Bhagavatam 2nd chapter, 1st canto. Atak pumbir dvija sreshta varnashrama vibhagasya svanuchitasya dharmasya sangsidhi haritoshanam. The whole purpose of organizing society is to please the Lord. So Krishna has to be in the center, both in the social orders and in the spiritual orders. You can't lose sight of that. And then everything works harmoniously. But that's an important aspect of it. Okay, going on now. Now he says what he does when he comes. Whenever there's a dharma becomes prominent, then text 8. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chadushkritam dharma sangstapanartaya Sambhavami yuge yuge. To deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to re-establish the principles of religion, I myself appear millennium after millennium. Purport. According to the Bhagavad Gita, a sadhu, or a holy man, is a man in Krishna consciousness. A person may appear to be irreligious, but if he has the qualifications of Krishna consciousness wholly and fully, he is to be understood to be a sadhu. So this is referencing a verse in the 9th chapter, I believe. Api chet suralacharo bhajate mamadanyabhak sadhureva samantavak samyak bhavasito hi sang. Prabhupada would quote this a lot. What's the definition of a sadhu? He would quote the second half of the verse. Second line, bhajate mamadanyabhak sadhureva. But the first line says, even if you find that he's performing some abominable activity, but the thrust of his whole life is that he's a devotee, he's acting in mind, then he should be considered a sadhu, and chiptam bhavati dharmatma. And then very quickly that discrepancy will be erased in his character. So the main thing is bhajate mam ananyabhak. He's unflinchingly worshipping me. That's a sadhu. So Prabhupada says, according to the Bhagavad Gita, sadhu, holy man, is a man in Krishna consciousness. That's this verse he always quotes. A person may appear to be irreligious, but if he has the qualifications of Krishna consciousness wholly and fully, he is to be understood to be a sadhu. That's still the same verse he's quoting. And a dushkritam applies to those who do not care for Krishna consciousness. Such miscreants, or dushkritam, are described as foolish and the lowest of mankind, even though they may be decorated with mundane education, whereas a person who is 100% engaged in Krishna consciousness is accepted as a sadhu, even though such a person may be neither learned nor well-cultured. So this dushkritam comes from another verse. It says, Namam dushkritano mudha papadyante nararama mahi apurita jnana asuram bhavamashrita. It's like there's 4 categories, but there's overlap. Dushkritam means those who have many good qualities. They may be very intelligent, well educated, but their intelligence is entirely in the service of material aggrandizement, sense pleasure. So they're dushkritana, mudha, fools. Namam dushkritana mudho, prapadyante. They don't. These are those who don't surrender to me. Prapadyante naradama, the lowest among mankind. And then there's a maya aprita jnana, those who have a high education, but their real intelligence has been stolen by illusion. They misuse the education for material purposes. And then finally the asuri bhavamas, those who are out and out demons, enemies of God. This is another category of dushkritis. Okay. Such miscreants or dushkritams are described as foolish and the lowest of mankind. So he's describing them in these categories are overlapping. Even though they may be decorated with mundane education, whereas a person who is 100% engaged in Krishna consciousness is accepted as a sadhu, even though such a person may be neither learned nor well cultured. As far as the atheistic, you see, this is the other one, asuri bhava. As far as the atheistic are concerned, it is not necessary for the Supreme Lord to appear as he is to destroy them, as he did with the demons Ravana and Kamsa. The Lord has many agents who are quite competent to vanquish demons. But the Lord especially descends to appease his unalloyed devotees, who are always harassed by the demoniac. The demon harasses the devotee, even though the latter may happen to be his kin. Although Prahlad Maharaj was the son of Hiranyakashipu, he was nonetheless persecuted by his father. Although Devaki, the mother of Krishna, was the sister of Kamsa, she and her husband Vasudeva were persecuted only because Krishna was to be born of them. So Lord Krishna appeared primarily to deliver Devaki rather than kill Kamsa, but both were performed simultaneously. Therefore it is said here that to deliver the devotee and vanquish the demon miscreants, the Lord appears in different incarnations. And of course we are actually in the 7th canto in the morning class, and we're just reading about the depredations of Hiranyakashipu, and then he will be very upset by his son who's refuses to give up his devotional attitude, and he tries to kill him. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita of Krishna Das Kaviraj, the following verses, Madhya 20, 263 to 264, summarize these principles of incarnation. Srishti hetuje murti prapanche avatare, se ishvara murti avatara namadhare, mayatita paravyome, Sabara avastan, Vishwayavatari dare avataranam. The avatar, or incarnation of Godhead, descends from the kingdom of God for material manifestation. And the particular form of the personality of Godhead who so descends is called an incarnation or avatar. Such incarnations are situated in the spiritual world, the kingdom of God. When they descend to the material creation, they assume the name avatar. Avatar means to descend, one who descends. There are various kinds of avatars, such as Purusha avatars, Guna avatars, Leela avatars, Shakti-avesh avatars, Manvantara avatars, and Yuga avatars, all appearing on schedule all over the universe. But Lord Krishna is the primeval Lord, the fountainhead of all avatars. So by rights, he's not actually an avatar, he's an avatari. Lord Krishna descends for the specific purpose of mitigating the anxieties of the pure devotees, who are very anxious to see him in his original Vṛndāvana pastimes. Therefore, the prime purpose of the Krishna avatar is to satisfy his unalloyed devotees. Now, there's one verse at the very end of the chapters in the rasa, about the rasa dance in the Bhagavatam, in 10th canto, chapter 33, where Shukadeva Goswami says to Parikshit, he says, Anugrahaya bhaktanam manusham deham Bhajate tadushi kridha yashudva tatparo bhavet. That out of his mercy for the devotees, Krishna descends and enacts his lila, same lila as in the spiritual world, so that the devotees will become attracted and they will hear about them and thus deepen their devotion to him. So this is another reason, solely to increase the devotees' love for him, appear to them who are longing to see him, like that, as explained. Okay. The Lord says that he incarnates himself in every millennium. This indicates that he incarnates also in the age of Kali. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, the incarnation in the age of Kali is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who spread the worship of Krishna by the Sankirtan movement, congregational chanting of the holy names, and spread Krishna consciousness throughout India. He predicted that this culture of Sankirtan would be broadcast all over the world, from town to town and village to village. Lord Chaitanya, as the incarnation of Krishna, the personality of Godhead, is described secretly, but not directly, in the confidential parts of the revealed scriptures, such as the Upanishads, Mahabharata, and Bhagavatam. The devotees of Lord Kṛṣṇa are very much attracted by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya. This avatar of the Lord does not kill the miscreants, but delivers them by his causeless mercy. So he doesn't kill the demons. The Lord Chaitanya, we see in his hands, there's no weapons, you see. But he has a weapon in the holy name, by which he kills the demoniac nature in the heart, and leaves the devotees there. So that he showed that by his pastimes, and it's still going on. All right, the next verse is very famous. Janma karma chame divyam evam yo vedi tattvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mam eti sorjana. Now I think we're going to have a little revision on this translation, hopefully. One who knows in truth the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. See that word tattvataha at the end of the first line. Purport. The Lord's descent from his transcendental abode is already explained in the 6th verse. One who can understand the truth of the appearance of the personality of Godhead is already liberated from material bondage, and therefore he returns to the kingdom of God immediately after quitting this present material body. Such liberation of the living entity from material bondage is not at all easy. The impersonalists and the yogis attain liberation only after much trouble and many births. Even then, the liberation they achieve, merging into the impersonal Brahma Jyoti of the Lord, is only partial, and there is the risk of returning to this material world. But the devotee, simply by understanding the transcendental nature of the body and activities of the Lord, attains the abode of the Lord after ending this body and does not run the risk of returning to this material world. In the Brahma Samhita 533, it is stated that the Lord has many, many forms and incarnations, Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam. Although there are many transcendental forms of the Lord, they are still one and the same Supreme Personality of Godhead. One has to understand this fact with conviction, although it is incomprehensible to the mundane scholars and empiric philosophers. As stated in the Vedas, Purusha Bodhini Upanishad, Eko Devo Nityalila Narakto, Bhakta Vyapi Bhakta Ridyantaratma. The one Supreme Personality of Godhead is eternally engaged in many, many transcendental forms in relationships with his unalloyed devotees. This Vedic version is confirmed in the verse of the Gita personally, in this verse of the Gita personally by the Lord. He who accepts this truth on the strength of the authority of the Vedas and of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and who does not waste time in philosophical speculations, attains the highest perfectional stage of liberation. Simply by accepting this truth on faith, one can, without a doubt, attain liberation. Okay. The Vedic version, Tattvamasi, is actually applied in this case. Anyone who understands Lord Kṛṣṇa to be the Supreme, or who says unto the Lord, "You are the same Supreme Brahman," the personality of Godhead, Tattvamasi. Such a person is certainly liberated instantly, and consequently his entrance into the transcendental association of the Lord is guaranteed. In other words, such a faithful devotee of the Lord attains perfection, and this is confirmed by the following Vedic assertion: Tameva vidadvati mrityumeti, nanyak panta vidyate yanaya. One can attain the perfect stage of liberation from birth and death simply by knowing the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and there is no other way to achieve this perfection. Shvetashvara Upanishad 3.8. That there is no alternative means that anyone who does not understand Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead is surely in the mode of ignorance, and consequently he will not attain salvation simply, so to speak, by licking the outer surface of the bottle of honey or by interpreting the Bhagavad Gita according to mundane scholarship. Such empiric philosophers may assume very important roles in the material world, but they are not necessarily eligible for liberation. Such puffed-up, mundane scholars have to wait for the causeless mercy of the devotee of the Lord. One should therefore cultivate Krishna consciousness with faith and knowledge, and in this way attain perfection. And I'm afraid we have to end there, and we will pick that up. Actually, I'm going to do text 9 again tomorrow, because it's so important. We really haven't done it justice. Thank you for attending the class, both locally and anyone who's out there. I suspect that the fact that no one here has to do with the marathon, the book marathon, that many of them are probably out doing books. But in any case, thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. And we'll have a kirtan.